This is Coffee Guts, and welcome back to Coffee Guts and Philosophy. On this episode, we'll be discussing ethics versus morals. First off, it's very important to mention that ethics and morals are not the same thing. Ethics are a structural concept that can be applied as a blanket statement for any sociological foundation, whereas morals are a cultural appropriation created by the immediate environment. There are common morals that can be found in multiple environments, but ethics can be applied to any environment. When there is a balance between an individual's desires and necessities, that individual can produce and promote a healthy participation in a sociological environment. To put it succinctly, think of it as Sigmund Freud's concept of id, ego, and superego. The id represents primitive desires such as eating, mating, and violence. The superego represents the morality of an individual's environment, such as the idea of what makes an individual good, according to their upbringing and observance of others locally and globally. The ego represents the mediator between the id and the superego. Think of it as the idea of when you're at work and you hear your stomach growl. You notice that it's almost lunchtime. You start to fantasize about your next meal. During your inner monologue, a coworker that you don't like starts rummaging on about how cool their new truck is. Your id would tell you to yell at the coworker and run off to consume your next meal. Whereas, the superego would tell you that yelling at a coworker, even if unliked, is generally frowned upon by your immediate coworkers and supervisor. The ego might declare that, while annoyed, it is best to listen to the coworker, but it is okay to subtly display a facial expression of neutrality to emphasize that while you are willing to listen, you are not obligated to stay. Therefore, you feel no guilt in zoning out and leaving the conversation. Moving on, virtue ethics operate in a manner that is finding the sweet spot between being cantankerous and courteous. It is noteworthy to mention that while virtue ethics mentions morality, it is not entirely dependent upon it. Due to the nature of ethics, you can learn what is commonly viewed as acceptable and not acceptable in any environment, such as murdering is usually frowned upon, being respectful is always welcome, etc., etc., things that make that. On the other end, the spectrum of morality is constructed by you and those around you. Immanuel Kant would define this as the categorical imperative, or simply put, the duty of an individual is dependent upon their position of ability. I know that sounds confusing, but think of it as this example. Imagine that someone is drowning, and you are a top-notch swimmer. Say you are in the immediate proximity of the person who is drowning. It is your categorical imperative to try to save this individual because you are beyond capable of doing so. The best way to think of ethics and morals in action is what's referred to as social contracts. There are different types of contracts, from John Locke, John Rawls, Jean-Jacques Rousseau, totally probably butchered that, Thomas Hobbes, and so on, but they share a similar theme. Ethical, moralistic, and political views are actively absorbed and implemented in any society. When you hold the door open for someone, when you participate in protests or voting, etc. All of these are examples of an individual testing and participating in their environmentally applied laws, social contracts. Now, it is noteworthy to mention that ethics and morals can be used in justification for ill-intended actions. To put it simply, ethics and morals can teeter-totter into a kiddie pool of eels. A great example would be that of utilitarianism in Hannah Arnett's concept of banality of evil, or deontology. Utilitarianism acts as a relative consequent by implementing the choice that provides the greatest amount of happiness and the least amount of suffering. In theory, this sounds like a great ideology. In fact, most of us engage in this behavior on a daily basis. The problem with this philosophy is that if the group is of ill or misinformed mindset, their choice of happiness greatly differs from what would be conceived as good or fair from the other mindset. An example, a dictator has convinced his entire country that the neighboring country is evil and must be destroyed. In this scenario, the effect of utilitarianism is at play, but the ethics and morals of its action are entirely relative to their mindset. For the sake of the argument, imagine that the choice that creates the greatest amount of happiness simultaneously is creating the greatest amount of suffering. Hannah Arnett shed light on this type of double-edged theorem. Arnett's political theory of the banality of evil introduces the concept of what is good for the majority can negatively affect the opposing majority. Essentially, what can be seen as a normalized act of participating in a social contract is actually a breeding ground for what can be considered as evil. Her example was that of the trial of Adolf Eichmann. Eichmann was an officer in the Nazi regime. His duties were to sign off on the deportation of individuals to concentration camps. With the flag of his pen, lives were lost. Now, in this situation, Eichmann was acting within his ethical duty as an officer and his moralistic duty as a member of the Nazi regime. However, his participation has caused tremendous suffering. A more up-to-date example of this would be that of the coronavirus. Now, we have a concept of what would be good for the many is what people would see as survival of the fittest. My family first creates a great amount of happiness for our group, whereas hoarding to an excess of what you can use is not necessarily good for the entire community. As Darwin put across the survival of the fittest, there's a difference between the individual and the group. When there is a large group, it's actually destructive to have a dog-eat-dog mentality because everyone relies on everyone else. You're not combating for survival at this time, you're combating for the continued establishment of your species. Comparative, if there was one cat and 5 dogs, the one cat has to act aggressively, whereas the 5 dogs are already an established group. Moving on, deontology is the path of ignoring anything but the end result. You can view this as an end-all, be-all type of philosophy. As long as the end result produces what you or the person in charge wanted, all means to get the end result are deemed justified and acceptable. Take, for example, if you wanted your friend to pay you back the $20 they owed you. If you slapped them in the knee with a baseball bat, rolled them over, took the $20 out of their wallet, and walked away, it would be deemed justifiable, seeing as your goal was to get the $20. Doesn't matter how you got it, you just had to get it. The key difference here between these two ideologies is that utilitarianism is actively participating and deontology is passively participating. An example, utilitarianism is asking what to do the entire process, whereas deontology only cares about the end result. The biggest thing to keep in mind is when it comes to ethics and morals is that every process can be abused, just like anything in life. It's about finding the smallest margin of error possible. Just like the saying, you can please some of the people some of the time, but you can't please all the people all the time. As a society, we create a smorgasbord of what rules or obligations we should follow, while simultaneously creating a subculture of leniencies that are allowed or not allowed within certain confines. What's your thoughts on social contracts? Are ethics and morals a cohesion of liberty and freedom, or restraint? Drop it like it's hot with a comment below. Well, My fellow copycat enthusiasts, if you're still awake, I applaud you. If you fell asleep, I don't blame you. If this is your 5th time watching due to your high intake of caffeine, remind yourself that one must imagine Sisyphus happy and take another sip. Like and subscribe if you'd like to stay up to date on Copycat's content, and I will see you